We have come far. This is Clark with the herd coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada, America. The last time I looked, still America. Well, we have some interesting times beginning to come now. The election was one thing, and now we have a gigantic, huge new wrinkle with the death of Judge Scalia. That's going to cause repercussions that are going to be huge, I think, because we are such a divided country since Obama got elected, and we were divided prior to that. And I think I know the reason for the division is because of the political parties. We are a nation of two parties who will never, ever, ever get along as long as they exist. We are going to be a country divided, and that divided does not good for the country. We need to get together as a people. We, the people, that's who this country was founded for. We need to get together and we need to make the political parties a thing of the past. Because look at it. Look what's happening. We have devastation in this country, and it's attributable to several things. But one of the main causes is these political parties. They will tear down anybody. It doesn't matter. It's all about power. And that power is absolute, and it needs to be taken away from these people, or we're going to have a disaster. And we are having a disaster. Just look, open up your eyes, see what's going on in this country. Just listen to what the political parties are doing. For example, last weekend, Saturday night, there was a Republican debate. 6 people were there, I think. I think it was 6 people. And Donald Trump would begin to open his mouth about something and people would boo. Well, Donald Trump points out in the audience and points to the people that are booing and identifies them as who they really are. Those were operatives of the Republican establishment that were there to boo Trump. Why is that? Is because the Republicans are so entrenched in their power, they're so power hungry that they want to say who the next leader of the Republican Party is going to be. Who are they going to nominate? If somebody like a Trump gets up there and questions their authority and goes to the people of the country and actually gets more votes than who the Republican Party wants, there's a big, huge issue there. They can't have that. That's a slap in their power face. And let me tell you something, that's exactly what needs to be done to these people. They need to be slapped down, and they need to have the power taken away from them, and we need to make these parties illegal. Because look at the despicable things that both parties do. First of all, the liberals, the Democrats, have put up 2 of the most miserable candidates you could possibly dig up. I mean, they're absolutely just sinful. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then you have a Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who should go down as the poster child of getting rid of the parties because she's a real babe. I mean, what a vicious hack she is, a partisan hack. And she'll always spin and spin like a top out of control, and nothing comes out of her mouth except garbage and lies. And I was very disappointed with the stacking of the deck, if you will. The Republican National Committee controls the tickets to who gets to go to those debates, and they stacked the deck with people who are opposed to Trump. Very simple. These are political games that are done day in and day out, election cycle after election cycle. They put up candidates that they know are not going to win because both parties are in on the fix. They're destructive. They're destroying this country. That was quite the witness of that. And you know what I love about Trump is he gets up there and he points it right out of what's going on. He identifies the situation, and now I hear today he's going on a couple things, and he's saying that the Republicans are in violation of the agreement that he signed with them, saying that he would support the Republican nominee. He's claiming they're not living up to their part of the bargain because of that little stunt they pulled last Saturday in the debate, was stacking people to boo Trump. That's not playing fair. And I knew when Trump signed that agreement, I knew why he was doing it. He was doing it because the Republicans are about to lose it, and they had to do something. So Trump, to be nice, I guess, said, well, okay, so he signed the agreement. And now you've got Trump saying that they're not holding up their end of the agreement, and what he's going to do about it, I don't know. What he's pointing out, the disposition of the Republican Party is sinister, and they need to be taken out. And Donald Trump, I think, and I hope, is just the party to do it. Now, he may need to play with the Republican Party till he gets a little further down the road here, but it's coming. And if he gets elected or gets the nomination over all the objections of the Republican Party, he will be the next president. And when he's sitting in that office, I hope that he takes my suggestion for heart and does something from the top down, as well as what we can do from the bottom up, and get rid of these political parties, because they are absolutely destructive. The other thing that's a big factor in these elections is the mainstream media that has turned into just a bunch of spinmeister liars, and they don't report the truth. They report what all the political parties and all the hacks and everybody want. And they're money creatures. They go for the sponsors and the money people, the special interests. That's what they're all about, and that's the song that they're going to toot. And that's all there is to it. You're on the air.
Hi, this is Diane. I'm calling to see if you need your carpet professionally steam cleaned at a great price.
Oh, boy.
Right now.
Here we go with the wrong numbers again. Amazing. Anyways, these political parties are a mess, and I hope Donald Trump, when he gets elected president, he'll do something about it, because that's about 90% of the problem of the political parties. If we did away with them, nothing's going to change in this country. What does a political party do for the voters? Absolutely nothing. They rob your vote. They rob the people that you put in office. They hijack them, and they end up paying them money and buying them right out from underneath you. They're a corrupt organization. Both parties are like that, and they need to go. We don't need political parties in this country. Our founding fathers warned us against political parties. They said that they were disruptive, organizations that were corrupt. And it's exactly right. And over the 200 years we've been around, we're seeing it every day now. These people got power, and they're beyond control. And we need to snap it away from them. We need to do something about the mainstream media. They're out of control. Donald Trump is certainly doing a lot to expose that. We're getting debates now where these announcers have been put on notice that if Donald Trump's going to call you out if you don't play fair. And that's the way it should be. Who do these announcers and these moderators, who the hell do they think they are? Where they can set up and play for special interest groups and try to attack and take out a presidential candidate, like they did to Kane and in the past. All they do is they float out an accusation. It doesn't have to be true. It's the accusation that brings these people down, except for the Democrat Party. You want to talk about accusations? Look at the Hillary Clinton campaign. Here's a lady that has 150 full-time FBI agents investigating her and her emails and other things that were done, like raising money for the Clinton Crime Foundation, while she was Secretary of State. You know damn well, you know the history of the Clintons. If you're not some young college age kid that doesn't know anything about anything, who doesn't know who the first president was, not that that's an important thing that one may have to know, but you need to know something. And they don't know nothing. And they're here supporting a Bernie Sanders, who probably, I mean, Hillary's probably the worst, most baggaged up candidate that ever has been. Bernie Sanders is an ideologue from the worst factor that you could ever even consider to be a leader of this country. This is the very reason why this country was founded, was to do away with people like Bernie Sanders and to have your own country where you were not going to be subjected to a dictator or a king. And Bernie Sanders wants to take all your money and then he wants to dish it out and redistribute money from the rich to the poor so he can buy votes and cement himself into power. His policies won't work. They have failed every single place they've ever been tried in the world, miserably, I might add. They never have worked. The Soviet Union was brought down by him. Now you got a guy, Putin over there, trying to do the same thing, but he's got a few problems going on with the price of oil right now. He's losing power every day, and he's got a lot of things coming his way. So, you know, you have to have an economy that works. You have to have smart leadership. You have to have basic instincts of people that know how to run things, running your country. We've never had that. We have never had anyone that had the proper instincts, other than maybe a Ronald Reagan. And what he was more of an actor. He was playing the part. I think he played the part of a governor, but he played the part of the proper ideology, and that's conservatism. With smaller government, he used to say the problem's not one thing, it's the government. The government is the problem. And, you know, he would come out with statements like that were right on the money, because they are. The closest thing to eternal life on this planet is a government program. He's absolutely right. We have problems with regulations. The Federal Register now, I hear, is like 800,000 pages, if you can imagine that. I don't know how tall those pages would add up to, but I think it would be several very tall towers, I believe. I'm not sure, but it's ridiculous. I know that. Nancy Pelosi couldn't read a 2,000-page health care bill until they passed it, remember? 2,000 pages. Well, here you have 800,000 pages. Can you imagine that? I can't imagine it. How could any business person get themselves into a business that could survive under regulations like that? You don't know what ends up. And then you get in business, you survive, you get over the first critical 5 years, and then here come more regulations and more regulations and more. And eventually, you know what? You just have it. You can't continue. So you lock your doors, you fire all your employees, and there you go. The government's run another productive enterprise out of business. What kind of morons do we have running this country? That they don't realize that the hub of this country is generated by people, small businessmen creating something, hiring people, doing things that other people will buy. That's the economic engine that drives this productive economy. And the government has now deteriorated to such a point that you have these morons running things who, by the way, have never produced anything in their life. All they know how to do is put their hand out, get either a contribution or a government check. And these are the worst kind of people you could ever have running anything. If you're a business owner, the last person you would ever hire is a bureaucrat. You couldn't handle it. You might as well just close your doors right off the bat, because you won't make it. Bureaucrats are the most unproductive people in the world. They don't know how to produce anything except more regulations and more obstruction to the businessman. They're terrible. And now we have a situation where we're going to really, really get involved in some things now. We're going to see the political ideology really come to the forefront. And this is going to be a fight to end all fights, I think, because with the death of Scalia, who was a staunch conservative, I think, he had a very intelligent brain. He knew the way the Constitution was founded. He knew textualism and originalism, and he could give you a whole dissertation on what the Constitution meant and how it should be applied. And he applied it that way. And he was one of the most sensible voices that I think's ever been on the Supreme Court. And you have right now, with his death, you have a court that's as divided as this country. You have a 4-4 court. 4 ideologues that are liberal and 4 that are some amount that are conservative. I question Roberts intensely. I don't think that man is a true conservative in any stretch of the imagination. He let Obamacare survive not once but twice when he had the power within his grasp to do away with it, and should have. I mean, when Obama and Pelosi and Reid were jamming this thing down our throats, they couldn't use the word tax. Oh, no, it's not a tax. Because why? Because they knew it wouldn't pass otherwise. Even with the Louisiana Purchase and all the other tricks that Harry Reid did, it wouldn't have passed. So they had to call it something other than a tax, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. And what does Roberts do to uphold it? He calls it a tax. I mean, this country's gone, folks. It's just gone. We have so many things that are wrong with it. It's controlled by people, and that's something that we weren't supposed to be. We were supposed to be controlled by laws, but the people get in charge, and then the people try to change the laws so they don't affect them. So the leaders are the ones that are controlling the laws, and they won't enforce the laws when they reflect on them, and they just let the country go to hell in a handbasket. And they don't have the knowledge to see what they're doing. They're ideologues. They just don't understand common sense. They're beyond that. They're past any hope for them. They're the worst of the worst. And this is what we're saddled with in this country, are despicable people like this. And this is what's running our show, our government. That's why Donald Trump is refreshing. He doesn't come from a political background. He comes from common sense. And his instincts, if you notice, have been proven correct time and time again. He said things and they come out to be true. And pay attention. Listen to what the man says and then see what happens. And you'll notice in a week or two, everybody starts taking his ideas. And this is refreshing because we've had a guy in the White House for the last 7 years who's an ideologue. I don't think he's a true American in any stretch of the imagination. And this is the guy, the president of the United States. He's more like a president of some Muslim country somewheres. He's beyond help. And now with the death of Scalia, can you imagine this ideologue putting up a candidate for the Supreme Court? I can't imagine such a fiasco. That would devastate this country. That would be the final straw on this Obama administration. If these Republicans, the ones that are still in power, would ever go for anything like this, they need to be run out of Dodge and never be allowed back into the country. Take a Mitch McConnell. This guy came out with a statement that we should. Why didn't he say would? Why did he have to use the word should? Should is discretionary. It's not mandatory. These Republicans need to make damn sure that if President Obama puts up somebody nominates somebody for the Supreme Court, that we, like Donald Trump said the other day, it's called delay, delay, delay. And that's the way to do it. And if Harry Reid, this mouthpiece for garbage, starts spewing at the chops again, like he's already come out and said, well, it's constitutional, the President of the United States can nominate, and he should nominate, and the Senate should confirm, and blah, 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 blah. Well, remember this, Mr. Reid, you piece of crap. What's the nuclear option? Remember that one, Mr. Reid? You're the one that floated that out there when you had to jam the Obamacare down the throats of the American people without one single Republican vote. And the way that you had to do that was change the rules in the middle of the game. Well, how do you like it? If your buddy Obama put some liberal hack up there to be a Supreme Court justice, and the Republicans in charge of both houses, because you had a lot to do with the Republicans taking over both houses, how do you like it when somebody perhaps even uses a nuclear option on you, you dirty schmuck? How would you like it? Yeah, well, that's the way it goes. This is a system that we have a little bit of a chance of surviving because we're still kicking a little bit. So, but we got to pay attention. I think the people are paying attention a little bit. I think maybe more than half of them for a refreshing number. And that's why Trump is having some success. And I think we have a chance of taking this country back to a certain extent and perhaps getting it on the rails away from the cliff that you and Pelosi and Obama have been driving us to. You're a piece of crap. And you're not running again, remember? So why don't you sit over there in Searchlight or wherever the hell you're from and just watch the cactus grow? That's about all you're qualified to do. Because Mr. Nuclear Option, you've been negated, okay? And you should have been negated 30-something years ago. Back then, I knew what you were. And unfortunately, not enough people could see their own hand in front of their face, I guess. You were always obvious to me that you were a hack. Well, hack yourself over to Searchlight and have fun. But anyways, there's Republicans like this Mitch McConnell. Boy, I tell you what, if that guy says out of his lips one more time should, the Republicans need to drum him out of office. We got rid of John Boehner, and we need to get O'Connell next. Mitch McConnell, whatever his name is, he needs to go because he's as rhino as you can get. He's never been a conservative that I know. I can remember him back in the impeachment days of Clinton. Bill Clinton. I guess we got to start qualifying that because of this other Clinton that's running. Jeez, I can't imagine it. But anyways, when Bill Clinton had been impeached by the Congress, this O'Connell was running around. They asked him on a talk show one time if he thought that Clinton should resign. And instead of pounding his fist on the table and said, of course he should resign. He lied to the American people, blah, 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 doing those kinds of things in the Oval Office. I mean, Jesus Christ. You could go on and on and on. But instead of that, this friggin' basket case goes, well, the president hasn't taken that position, and it would be up to him to be. I mean, I saw that, and I turned my stomach over. I said, this guy is a schmuck. And that was back in what, the 90s? 20-something years? I mean, and this guy's been some sort of a leader in Congress, either the minority Senate or the majority now. I mean, how do we even allow a guy like that to get in any position of leadership is beyond me. And it's because our system is basically broken. It's controlled by special interest groups, people with money that have a way to buy these politicians and get what they want. And a guy like Trump has played that game in the past because he was a businessman. He had to donate to both sides of the aisle to get anything done. So he played the game. That's what you got to do as a businessman. That's part of the extortion you live at through this country. And I've heard from people that live in dictatorships. They rave it. Well, the dictator, at least you got one guy to pay off, and then you're done. But in a thing like the United States over here, you got to pay this guy and that guy. And when you think you're all paid up, here comes somebody else with a new deal, a new that, a new regulation. It never ends. So we have to stop the special interest, and we have to get some sense. What we need to do is go by our laws. We have a constitution. We start there. Everything that's in the constitution is the way we do things. And I heard, I don't know, was it Gramnesty, Leslie Gramnesty, whatever his name is? They were asking him about this appointment, and oh no, it was Elizabeth Warren, this hack from Massachusetts, thinks she's going to be president someday. They asked her about this appointment, and she said that, well, constitutionally speaking, well, excuse me, Miss Warren, constitutionally speaking, it's not. She said that there's nowheres in the Constitution where it says that the last term of a democratically elected president should not appoint a vacancy in the Supreme Court at the end of his term. That's not in the Constitution. What a friggin' moron. If this bitch ever gets to be president, we're going to be in just more and more and more trouble. This person has no concept of the principle of what the Constitution is. The Constitution clearly states that anything not enumerated in the Constitution is not a law. The Constitution designates what is a law and what isn't a law. If it's not in there, then the power delegates or relegates to the states. And when this Elizabeth Warren says that, well, there's no law that says that, where does it say that a Democrat? No, you're right. It's not in there. So the proper phraseology is that there's not a law that says a Democrat president gets to appoint whatever, whenever, what have you. That's not in there, you bitch. So go back to Massachusetts, put on your Indian feather, and go apply for some college programs or whatever. Maybe you can take one on the Constitution, because as a usual liberal, you don't have a clue what you're talking about. Go talk to Harry Reid about nuclear options and stuff. Right now, you've lost control of the Senate and the House. I think I remember President Obama saying, shortly after he was elected, that if you want to change things in Washington, D.C., you need to win some elections. Well, guess what, you moron? What goes around comes around. Now we've won a couple elections. We've knocked the liberals out of Congress, and we've knocked them out of the Senate. We've retired Harry Reid as majority leader. So there you go, Mr. Obama, President Obama. We've won some elections, and we're fixing to win another one. And we'll see what we end up with. But in the meantime, you're not going to get to appoint another justice. You've already appointed two bitches to the Supreme Court who are ideologue liberals and have, come up with some harebrained 5 decisions, and we can't stand any more of that. We need to get our control of our country back. And that's another thing that we need to look at. We need to look at the whole makeup of our courts. Our courts are broken. And when you have a Supreme Court, like they've been putting out now on TV and whatnot, that, well, the Supreme Court doesn't have anything pressing right now. They're not in session all the time anyways. And pretty much all their work's been done now for... Well, let me tell you something. They only hear 80 cases a year. Now, don't you think that's a little strange that the highest court in the land, with the litigious society we are, and the morons that are running the court system below them to start with, that we don't need a little bit more efficiency, if you will, from a court system? More than 9 people that I guess can be any age, like Congress, you got to wheel them out on a stretcher. I mean, Scalia was 79 when he was dying. Ginsburg was having an operation, a rather serious one, my understanding, over the weekend. And she has had in the past, she's had cancer of the pancreas. She's had some other severe illnesses that if she wasn't a liberal, it probably would have killed a conservative. But these liberals live forever as long as they're obstructing justice. So, the one that could have died easily didn't, and the one that had common sense and knowledge of the Constitution did die. So I think that goes to the point that I'm trying to make, is that the Supreme Court and the makeup of the United States being its own branch of government is too important to have the control of something such as marriage laws and gay marriage and what have you to be controlled by really one person. Because when a court is divided, as the Supreme Court's been, 4-5, it comes down to one person voting one way. The ideologues are going to vote their way. Nothing's going to change their mind. That's what they're there for. That's why they were appointed by an ideologue president, is to vote the ideology. And Scalia made comments, do you have discussions about whether to take a case or this or that? Or no, we don't discuss anything because you can't change these justices' minds. They are ideologues, and they're committed to whatever their ideology says, and that's it. They will never change their mind. So how does this system work? The point is, it doesn't work. It's the worst system ever, and we have to change it. We have to fundamentally change our judiciary to where it has a chance of working. And right now it doesn't. And as another example of that, let me talk a little bit about a situation where the new appellate court here in Nevada just weighed in on my case that I had before the court, where I went and I was forced to take an action against my sister because she was stealing money that belonged to me. And she was doing it by some paperwork that she finagled somehow, if she even did, from my mother, who had suffered from Alzheimer's for 4 years before she died, and shortly before she did die, or at least the paperwork's dated as such, she made my sister sole trustee of her estate plan, which was 2 trusts. Now, my mother, in her right mind, never, ever, ever would have made Wanda in charge of anything, because this girl never grew up. She never had a clue what she was doing, and my mother knew that. My mother would get pissed off every time she had to buy Wanda something. Here's Wanda, 50 years old, and my mother's spending money for carpet and couches and washers and dryers, and because my sister didn't have 2 quarters to put together. When my mother died, my sister's bank account was minus $13.90. And then what went on after my mother's death was she just started stealing money from my mother's bank accounts left and right. Half of that was mine, but she used it for her personal uses, and that's why I had to file a case. Very simple, file a case, get access to the records. But this judge that got assigned this case was the worst judge in the world to ever get assigned a trust case, because he admitted after the trial on the last day that he didn't have a clue what he was doing. He had never handled a trust case as a lawyer or as a judge, and he basically said on the record that he was not competent. And here he is making a decision on a trust case. He never should have heard the first word of evidence. And as a result, he comes through with a decision that's completely bonkers. It's the worst decision ever, because he didn't follow the law. He didn't follow the evidence. He came up with an agenda that he had was to pay all the lawyers in his courtroom. And that's not legal. You can't, and especially in a trust case, a spendthrift trust, the people that have the trust held for them, the beneficiaries, they can't use the money at will. A trustee has to abide by the terms of the trust document, and only when the trust document says that these beneficiaries are to get something can the trustee then give it to them. Prior to that, the beneficiaries can't get anything, and the trustee can't designate them to have anything. unless it's spelled out in the trust agreement. Well, this Judge Earl's his name. He thinks that he can just award all kinds of fees from the corpus of a trust, and the trust is not even a trust inside the state of Nevada. So he's way out of bounds on every single front. This guy was totally out of bounds. And he kept on plugging away, doing this, doing that. He was told continuously by me, my lawyers, and you can't do this, you can't do this. And he would answer, under New Hampshire law, I can. Well, check your driver's license, Judge. You're not from New Hampshire. You're from Nevada. You don't get to do New Hampshire law from Nevada. That's why states have sovereignty. That's why they uphold to their own constituents, not you. But he just plucks away. I'm going to have to rule by New Hampshire law. I understand that. And then by the time push came to shove, he didn't rule by New Hampshire law or any law, because what he did, you couldn't do in Nevada either. Trusts are a different breed of animal. They've been around for centuries. They were designed to protect people's assets that had earned the assets. They owned the assets, and they had a right to betroth them to whoever they wished upon their demise. And trusts were set up to where the trust document would be the last wishes of the settler, they call it. And those trust documents have to be abided by because they're the last wishes of the settler. A judge can't change that. Nobody can change it. It's the intent of the settler that this is how their money's to be divided. In my mother's case, she had two trusts. One was a money trust that held some cash and some stock certificates, and that was to be divided between me and my sister equally, as was the home originally was supposed to be divided between me and my sister equally. She had two offspring, and we were supposed to divide everything, and we were to be served as co-trustees. That was before my mother had a stroke. Those were her last wishes. Okay, then she had a severe stroke. She should have died from it, is what the doctors told me. They couldn't believe she survived. And anyway, she lived for another 4 years in the midst of Alzheimer's and dementia and everything else. And at the end, you couldn't carry on a conversation with her because you wouldn't know what she was telling you. Because I've come to find out through medical records and so forth that were produced at this trial that she thought she was living 35 years ago. So they would give her tests, doctors would ask her questions and so forth. And when asked what date it was, she'd say 1970-something. So she was living 30-something years in the past. And that answers a lot of questions because I'd hear her answer or talk or tell me things, and I go, what in the world is she talking about? I mean, I don't even understand what... I was with her all day yesterday, and we didn't do any of these things. Well, now I had my answer. She was relaying stories that happened 30-something years ago, acting like it was yesterday. So then I understood. Wow. Anyways, this judge, he makes this ruling, and completely out in space. None of it was legal. How can you award something from something, a trust, and you can't? The beneficiaries don't have access to that money. How can a judge award it? He can't, and it's in the documents. It's in the statutes. A trust is not susceptible to any rulings from a judge. You just don't have that power. It's the last wishes of the settler. It's their money, and their intentions have to be upheld no matter what. That's primary. And this judge just goes trundling on. He ignores all that, does whatever the hell he thinks he can do. And there's been some heavy-weighted opinions come down, several from the Supreme Court, that have dictated that one state cannot control property located physically in another state. Simple. That's Law 101. Everybody knows this. You don't have to be a law student or a lawyer to know this. It's well known that states have sovereignty, and no other state can control their sovereignty. I remember an example of this that kind of hits home because it's pretty easy to understand. Massachusetts borders New Hampshire, and Massachusetts has a sales tax. And as a result of that, along the borderlines of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, there's liquor stores that are just across the border. Well, people from Massachusetts go over to New Hampshire to buy liquor. They also go over to New Hampshire to buy things for their car, like tires. Well, the New Hampshire legislature decides that they're going to pass a law that all the tire stores within the borders of New Hampshire have to follow. And that is that any car that comes into New Hampshire to buy tires and has Massachusetts plates has to pay the New Hampshire sales tax. Well, that went to the Supreme Court of New Hampshire, believe it or not. I can't believe why it wasn't thrown out in the first court it went to. And the decision was, no, nice try, Massachusetts, but we're not going to be your collection agency for your COFAs. So you can leave our people alone. You can leave our businesses alone. So that was a result of that. And that's apropos. I mean, how could a state create its own trust law, which New Hampshire does and Nevada does? As a matter of fact, Nevada touts itself as being the number one greatest place in the world to create a trust, kind of like they pass themselves off as business and corporation state also to compete with Delaware. Between the two of them, who's the best state to house a corporation in? Well, of course, states like to do that because they get fees and so forth for housing your corporations. Well, that's made Delaware a lot of money. So Nevada, being I would call them a crook, decide to see what they can steal from the Delaware people by copying them. So anyways, they pass themselves off as being this great state for trust. Well, they have a district court judge by the name of Alan Earl that doesn't have the first clue what a trust is, what it's supposed to do, has no idea about trust law, none whatsoever. And this judge, first of all, this was not a trust case. This was a trust to get access to paperwork from a bank. Now, all Earl had to do was order that this trustee, my sister, put up the paperwork. Instead of ordering her to do so by a certain date, he kept just extending the deadline for discovery. So instead of forcing her to deliver a bank statement, for example, by such and such a date, he would just extend the discovery, which that's pathetic. What are you doing? Jesus Christ. And in the meantime, I'm paying my lawyers left and right. They're trying to subpoena these records. They're on the phones talking to these bankers for hours and hours, and of course billing and billing and billing. And this is ridiculous because my sister had a duty to give me any paperwork that I asked concerning the trust. That was a duty. If she didn't give me the paperwork, she's guilty of a breach of trust. And the judge should have lowered his hammer right then and there and removed her as trustee. But this idiot judge, and I'll call him that to his face, so don't get on my case about me saying things because I've told it to his face. I mean, this was the most pathetic judge I've ever seen. And lucky me, I had to have personal dealings with this clown. At any rate, and my luck to get him assigned to this case. If this had gone to a family court matter issue, it never would have went anywhere. It would have been done and over with in a heartbeat because somebody would have known what they were doing. Wait a minute. This trustee has to put up the paperwork. Now, what's hard about getting a bank statement, a real bank statement, not something generated on your home computer, some fraudulent document, but the real deal? What is so hard? I can get a bank statement in seconds off my computer. What the hell's so hard? Anyways, this judge, just maniac, anyways, he ends up making a decision on this case. Completely did not uphold the evidence. He did not apply the burden of proof correctly to my sister. Had an obligation to prove that the changes that were done the last minute of my mother's life were done when she was competent and she didn't use undue influence. My sister didn't even put on a defense, so she certainly didn't meet her burden. But the problem was Judge Earl, not knowing what the hell he did, applied the burden to me, and that's against New Hampshire law. And he even mentioned in his ruling that such and such a case that happened in New Hampshire that had decided that there was malfeasance done in the production of the documents where there was undue influence and the person was not capable of doing a trust was the final result of that particular case that this Judge Earl pointed to in his ruling had that result. And he points to that as meaning something, but then he never applies what it meant. I mean, it just ends there. He says this such and such a case, the proponent of the will has the burden to prove this, this, and that, and then ends it. He doesn't apply it to this case. So as a result, the burden got misapplied to me. And then the appellate court, in their ruling, did the same thing the judge did. It goes down this path. It points to a New Hampshire case whereby they found undue influence. They found that the person wasn't capable, had testamentary capacity. And then this appellate court says that the proponent of the will has the burden to da-da-da, and then stops. That's it. Doesn't apply it to what's the meaning. Why did you say this? What's the... You don't apply it one way or the other. Why did you put that up there? Or, I mean, if you read it, they're saying that the proponent of the will had the burden. My sister didn't meet the burden. So this case should have been vacated because the rulings are all not correct. But, it's just unbelievable. You look at the affirmation, they call it, and it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And the reason it is because the courts have a tendency to protect their own. And that's one of the problems with this country, is we have to straighten this situation out to where courts have direct oversight from people other than people in the industry, like other judges and other lawyers and so forth. That's an industry, and the industry has been hijacked, and it needs to have oversight. And we need, my recommendation has always been through this show, The Herd, that we have tribunals that are set up, civilian tribunals, where the electorate identifies, let's say, 5 people in the area there that they're going to represent as tribunal members, and then they get these cases instead of going to appeal court or a Supreme Court. They go to this tribunal that decides the case on one issue and one issue only, and that is the law. What is the law? Now, if somebody looked at my case, it's all about the law. What is the law? Very simple. The law is that one state cannot control another state's trust. They have no control over property or trust outside of the borders of their state. So Judge Earl has no jurisdiction to make any ruling whatsoever outside of the borders of Nevada. Period. End of case. That's it. Now, that's pretty cut and dry. That's the law. That's in the book. There's a precedent from the United States Supreme Court, several of them, and there's numerous precedences that point to those cases from the Supreme Court as controlling. So it's pretty damn well established in this country that if you have a trust in New Hampshire, the state of Nevada cannot control the trust, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's the way it is. So a tribunal made up of citizens with common sense, one would hope, they could look at the law, they could read the law, black and white, and they could look at the Supreme Court precedents and go, oh, well, that's pretty cut and dry. So this Nevada judge didn't have jurisdiction, so everything that he did and ruled in this matter is null and void. It has no meaning whatsoever. The law looks at an issue like that, saying that it never happened. It's a complete nullity. That order, that's void, never, ever happened. And that's what the appellate court in this particular case should have determined, that the Judge Earl had no jurisdiction to do anything, let alone dictate the sale of a home in another state so he could pay his lawyers in the state of Nevada is obscene. It's absolutely crazy. So why did the appellate court come to this erroneous conclusion? To affirm a void decision? How does an appellate court affirm a void decision? Well, this is a completely not competent court. You can't do that. So I have a void of affirmation of a void decision. Crazy. And the reason that they did it, I guess, is because to not do that, they would be throwing one of their own, this Judge Earl, under the bus. Well, the situation, the facts are that this judge decided not to run for re-election in 2015 for health reasons. Well, I would agree with that. I think he decided to not run or stay in office a little late. He should have got out of office a lot sooner than he did. because he has health problems for sure, especially in the mental area. So this was a completely invalid judge, not competent court, and everything that the Judge Earl did was void. Now I have another judge that's taken his place. He was elected to Department 19, and he said in open court on the record, which I have, that, well, Judge Earl did a lot of work on this case, and so he's supporting Judge Earl because Judge Earl did a lot of work on the case. Well, Judge Earl didn't have to do anything on the case originally but uphold the law, make sure that my sister put up the records as quickly as possible, and this case would have been over. But Judge Earl, in his non-wisdom, with his mental capacity the way it was, extended this case on and on and on and on for years and years and years, which did nothing but drive up the legal costs that couldn't be collected anyways because all the money was held in trust. And you can't take the money from a trust to pay lawyers. It's just not possible, especially a spendthrift trust. It's not even the beneficiary's money. So where's this money coming from? It's the money of dead people. And their intent was to give it in a way that they proposed in their trust document. Not proposed, they dictated that this is the way that their assets were going to be divided, and that's all there is to it. That's the way they have to be divided. And this judge came out with a ruling contrary to that. So his ruling is void. As simple as that. It can't be, it's nothing. It never happened. And that's the way that this case has to come out. But this judge, I knew that. I did a thing. I sold a home back in New Hampshire before the judge could get his hands on it to give it to lawyers. And I sold the house, and then to further protect it, I got a cashier's check in the name of the trust that I'm holding today to buy another house sooner or later, when all this mess clears up. And in the meantime, Judge Earl induces the bank back in New Hampshire to stop payment on a cashier's check, which, again, you can't do. This is Law 101 again. But he was told by the bank, we can't stop payment on a cashier's check unless it's lost, destroyed, or stolen. Well, that's no problem for an illegal judge like Earl. He decides to sign an order saying that the cashier's check is lost, destroyed, or stolen. And that's what he does. He signs a fraudulent affidavit. And on the basis of this affidavit being signed that the check no longer exists, he tells the bank to return the money to Nevada. Well, the problem with that statement is the money was never in Nevada. This is an illegal, despicable judge who's totally out of order. And what a sick judge. And to do this to beneficiaries. What did the beneficiaries do? Why are we attacking dead people's money to give it to lawyers? Why? Because these lawyers have a tendency to donate to these judges' campaign contributions, because if they're going to operate within the courts in Nevada, they have to have contributed to the campaigns of these judges. Well, they're not going to do very well in court, are they? Because the people deciding the cases are the people that want the money so that they can run for office and be reelected. So this is a corrupt system. It's as worse as it gets. And we, the people of Nevada, sit around and we allow this to happen. I mean, we got to stop this, folks. We need to pay attention. We need to knock this crap out. And this appellate court that's brand new, it's only been around for about a year. I'd got my case last June, so I hadn't even had my case for 6 months, and it comes forth with an affirmation of a void order. I mean, this is just a void order on a void order. I mean, what the hell is going on? Anyways, it's pathetic example of the judiciary here in Nevada, which rates an F on a report that comes out on the judiciaries around the United States by a company out of Washington, D.C. that does a report every year on the integrity of the court system in this country. And Nevada has a big black F and for their judiciary, and I can see why. They're pathetic. And they don't have any judiciary here. It has no integrity whatsoever. And this is not a state that we can rely upon. And the people of this state have to do something. We need to throw the entire judiciary out. All the judges, everybody that's part of the system needs to go. And we need to start fresh. And you'd be better off getting a first-year law student out of a law school to be a judge in this country, because maybe they could follow the law. Because the judges that are
special interest up, or they have to get money to run, so they have to get money from the lawyers that practice before them. The whole system's corrupt. So let's do away with this system, folks. Let's change this state. Let's get a state to where we can get something better than an F on our report card. That would be nice. Anyways, nice talking to you, and I'm going to keep you abreast of what's going on with the state of Nevada and the judiciary. And things need to be done, folks. We really, really need to pay attention. And we need to pay attention on what's happening with the Supreme Court. And we need to watch the show that's going to be occurring here over the next several months with Obama thinking that he's going to be able to appoint a Supreme Court justice, and Harry Reid that thinks, well, now that he's no longer in power, he's still going to say that, he's in power. You're going to do that. Yeah. Well, nuclear option, Harry Reid. Go to hell. See you later. Goodbye, Irene.
My country chooses thee.